Hello everyone and welcome to the press conference for Jagden, The Hunt. And I will introduce the people. Quite a few people are with us today. Two of them are actually not sitting with us at the table, but they're somewhere in the audience. The two producers, Mr. Morten Kaufmann and Miss Sissy Graum Jørgensen. I don't know where you are. Please stand up. There they are. In 1998, Festen, his first feature, I think, made quite a splash in Cannes. He's back this year. It took him a while to come back. Director Thomas Vinterberg. At my far left, your far right, nothing political. The script writer, now also a director, but here today only in his capacity as a scriptwriter, Mr. Tobias Lindholm. Sitting next to him as Agnes, Miss Louise Hassing. Sitting next to her as Nadia, Miss Alexandra Rappaport. Sitting next to me as Brun, Mr. Lars Runter. What?
Nothing.
Okay.
It's all right.
It's all right. Sitting to the left of Mr. Vinterberg, an actor who was in Pusher, an actor who, more to the point, was in Mr. Vinterberg's Oscar-winning short last round in 1993 as Theo, Mr. Thomas Bo Larsen. Now, about the lady sitting next to Mr. Runte, I asked around, and I was told that, to put it simply, she was the Scandinavian equivalent of Dame Joan Plowright, Dame Maggie Smith, and Dame Judi Dench rolled into one. So, as Greta, Miss Susse Wold. And finally, as Lucas, a character which represents a 180 degrees turn from the Pusher, and I'm not even bringing up James Bond, Mr. Mads Mikkelsen. And the first question is here.
Hello? Yeah. I'm Terje Itzvåg from Adresseavisen Norway. I have two questions for Mr. Vinterberg. The first one is the story in this film looks very parallel to a Norwegian scandal in the early 90s, the so-called Bjugn case. Can you say something about if it's inspired and its parallels? And the second question is, this is a strong story about the innocent man. What's your thought on the movie's potential for making it harder for children actually to be believed when talking about abuse?
To answer the first question, this film is inspired by quite a few cases, one of which is the Bjugn case from Norway. We read several cases, did a lot of research, and frighteningly enough, there are a lot of these cases. We, of course, quite early in the process had to step out of real life and into drama. So this is fully fiction and our own sick fantasy, you can say. I find it very important to say that, again, in a case like this, the kids are the victims. They are the one drawing the short straw. In this case, we claim that a child lies. She lies to satisfy the grown-ups. What happens then is that a huge fantasy appears in front of her. Her mother starts crying. People are put in prison. They're sent to gynecologists. And this huge illusion that something bad happened to them appears in front of them and becomes part of their memory. And they will suffer from this the rest of their lives, such as the ones who actually really suffered from this. I felt it important to address these matters, yes.
And for the second part?
Oh.
Okay. Who has the mic? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, there was a second question, right?
Yes.
Well, there is a convention saying that children. In Denmark, we have a saying that children and drunk people always tell the truth. Yes, we are claiming that this is not always the truth. We are saying that people sometimes lie, also kids. But what we're also saying is they're lying to satisfy the grown-ups around them. Was that enough answer? Great, thank you.
Ma'am, and then the gentleman here, and then the lady here.
This is a question for Thomas Vinterberg. Deborah Cole from AFP News Agency. It's a follow-up question to that one, because I was wondering, you've taken a very controversial take on this delicate subject matter, and I was wondering if you had encountered any resistance already with the script, and whether you expect any sort of blowback by your controversial take on the subject of child molestation.
Well, I'm not taking anything for granted, and I don't know what's going to come out of this. But in all due respect, what we try to do is a film about the loss of innocence. Here's a bunch of naked men fooling around. Like in my childhood, I grew up in a hippie commune surrounded by genitals. And it was all very pure and all very innocent, okay? And things have changed. Things have become colder and more fearful, obviously. We've lost the innocence, and for good reasons, of course, because there are good reasons for that. I was here to tell that in '98. Now I'm here to tell the antithesis, and I'm afraid the sad truth is somewhere in between these movies.
Sir.
Good afternoon. Bruce Kirkland from the Toronto Sun. I'd like to turn this to Mads Mikkelsen, because, for example, we love seeing you as a Bond villain, as Henri had mentioned. We love seeing you as a brute of a Viking in Valhalla Rising. But we also are thrilled when you do a contemporary story and you're embodying some of the ideas that Thomas has talked about already in a very human drama like this. And this is when you're at your best from our point of view. And I'm curious, from your point of view, what thrill there is to embrace a story like this, and what you want to tell about the saga that Thomas was referring to.
Well, there's many ways to approach a story. I think that one is the story itself. Another thing is to be working with Thomas. A different thing is to be working with old friends I've never worked with. And the third thing is the character itself. We were pretty firm from the very beginning that we were not going to make this into a thriller. Did he do it or did he not do it? We're talking about an innocent man from the very beginning. And for us, it was not so much a film about cases like this. We know for sure that way too many kids are being abused out there. We know that. We're not questioning that. And we also know that some cases are like we're portraying in this film. But for us, it was very much about when you love something as much as you can love a child, that love will be turned into fear when something happens or might happen. And how a little society of old friends and relatives and colleagues can implode with this fear. Love is extremely powerful and will be as powerful when it's turned around. And that's what the story where we actually wanted to give life to, not so much the political drama of cases like this, but that's kind of like a little benefit as well.
If I may jump in, according to the production notes, Mr. Vinterberg, this story, this film, came out of a batch of papers that you got sometime 10 years ago, 12 years ago, that you didn't read until fairly recently before you started the film. At which point did Mr. Lindholm come in, and what did you bring to the part, sir?
When Thomas and I finished Submarino, we agreed to work together again.
You had already worked together on Submarino.
On Submarino, and we found it quite fun to write together. We are writing in the same way, you can say. We love the natural stories. We like to tell in reality. So the love for reality was there, and then Thomas came and told about this story that he had. I had become a father doing Submarino, so the paranoia of being a parent was in me, and I was very intrigued when Thomas came to ask me about this story. So that's when I jumped in, and then we just started to talk about the subject. And what was most important for us from the beginning was to say, this is a man who didn't do it. So you can say, of course, we read a lot of cases about the subject, but most of all, we looked at it as a witch hunt, which has happened in history for a long time. In different cases, in the 50s in the US, it was communists. After the Second World War in Denmark, it was Nazis. But still, the idea to hunt down a person and to put that into some kind of well-structured story was our main goal. So that's what we went out to do.
Thank you. Ma'am, and then over there.
My name's Nandini, I'm from India. My first question is to Mr. Vinterberg. This is a very powerful film, but it also hinges on powerful performances from the actors. I'm specifically interested in how you worked with the child actor who plays Clara. How much of the plot did you tell her, and how did you elicit reactions from her? And my second question is to Mr. Mikkelsen.
And one step at a time. Thank you. Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, Annika, as she's called, is a natural talent. She's just incredible. They all felt very fearful when she was around because she's just really incredibly good. It's not because I'm a genius. Yes, I am a genius, but in this case, she did it her own. And she had a very good trainee called Jette. She was absolutely splendid. And she understood what I was talking about. But of course, we did not let her into the dirty world of this story. She understood that this guy did something wrong or did not do something wrong, but she did something wrong about it. She understood the plot without being sort of led into the world of sexualities. She's brilliant, and the dog was brilliant too, and was a lot of pressure on these people.
Second part.
My question for Mr. Mikkelsen is, when you meet Clara again, and my favorite scene in the film was when she's looking at those lines and you say, how are we going to cross all of these? And when you lift her, there's a little moment of hesitation, a little bit of awkwardness. But the character doesn't feel that awkwardness with anybody else after the time passes. You know, like we suddenly jump to when his son gets the hunting license. So how did you reconcile those reactions in your head as the character? How do you think the character would have reacted to all those people aside from Clara?
At the moment when the years passed?
Yeah, when the years passed, and I mean, did you feel it was entirely authentic that he's, you know, completely normal with everybody else except Clara?
Yeah, I did, in the sense that we created a very stubborn person, and at the same time we created a person who had very big difficulties saying no and put down his foot, which is a combination from hell when he's in a situation like this. No, he insists on staying there. He insists of shopping in his shopping mall. He insists of going to his church. So he insists that his friends are still his friends. It's not easy for him, but if you have to go that way, down that path, you have to do it fully, 100%. Somebody's talking.
Sorry, walking
This is Thomas. No, but and as you said, I mean, the story with her in the end was actually very beautiful because that was he came up with that. We've been discussing that for a long time, how we should finish the story with the little girl, and then we had many options, and then it was such a simple thing that all of a sudden Thomas saw this little floor full of lines and said, "This is the scene." So that came up in the very last second. But what was the question? Am I answering the right one?
Ma'am, go ahead, and then the gentleman next to you.
Karen Batt for the Huffington Post. A question to Mr. Vinterberg, inspired also from what you were saying as well. For me, the film, the child abuse issue was not the main issue. For me, what was interesting was how quickly people can betray each other. And I have a two-part question. One is, what personally interests you about the issue of betrayal and the psychology? I thought the psychology of betrayal was very subtle. And second of all, what I particularly liked was the decision to not make it black and white, that there's an actual movement in the film that goes back to the friend, embracing the friend, and whether you had that original idea to not have it just be everyone turns against him, but there's actually a nice little almost happy ending.
Happy ending. Wow. We're not used to that in Denmark. It's a dark and sinister country. Listen, I don't know if I can answer your question. What I can